All right, the governor has called for a special session here in the state of Texas and announced the agenda. We're going to go down the line what this agenda is. Let's get going here from the governor's website. Governor Greg Abbott has issued a proclamation identifying 18 agenda items for the upcoming special session that begins at 12 p.m. Monday, July 21st. We delivered on historic legislation in the 89th regular legislative session that will benefit Texans for generations to come. There's more work to be done, particularly in the aftermath of the devastating floods in the Texas Hill Country. We must ensure better preparation for such events in the future. All right, let's get started with the agenda here. Flood warning systems. Legislation to improve early warning systems and other preparedness infrastructure in flood-prone areas throughout Texas. Flood emergency communications. Legislation to strengthen emergency communications and other response infrastructure in flood-prone areas throughout Texas. Number 3, relief funding, relief funding for Hill Country floods. Legislation to provide relief funding for a response to and recovery from the storms which began in early July 2025, including local match funding for jurisdictions eligible for FEMA public assistance. Natural disaster preparation and recovery. Legislation to evaluate and streamline rules and regulations to speed preparedness for and recovery from natural disasters. Eliminate STAR test. Legislation to eliminate the STAR test and replace it with effective tools to assess student progress and ensure school district accountability. I don't think this is such a bad idea because you have people who did not graduate in the state of Texas because of a state required test you take at the end of high school. At least that's, it was called the tax test when I was in high school. And now they've replaced it with the STAR test. The STAR test, or the State of Texas Assessments of Academic Readiness, is a standardized testing program used in Texas public primary and secondary schools to assess students' academic achievements and knowledge learned in specific grade levels. It measures how well students have learned and can apply knowledge and skills defined in the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills Test, TEKS. The STAR test was introduced in 2012 as a replacement for the Texas Assessment of Knowledge and Skills tax program. The tax program. Sorry, but I'm glad that he's looking to get rid of this test. I think that providing students with the necessary things they need to succeed throughout the school years is a lot better than basing it off of a single test or a few tests off of different different subjects. I don't think that's right because I know people who did not graduate because they failed the state test and they had good grades throughout their entire school, throughout high school. Doesn't make sense. All right, cut property taxes. This is a big one. Legislation reducing the property tax and burden on Texas and legislation imposing spending limits on entities authorized to impose property taxes. For a lot of people, this is the single biggest issue in our state because property taxes are outrageous here in the state of Texas. Everybody knows that. Yeah, we don't have a state income tax, but the property taxes are insane. So they need to do something to really lower it or find a way to get rid of it altogether if possible. And I'll read what people were saying about the legislative session that just finished, the grade that they gave the state on what was done. A lot of people they look at property taxes as the single biggest issue from their state government, here in Texas at least. All right, protect children from THC. Legislation making it a crime to provide hemp-derived products to children under 21 years of age. I think this is good because we know he vetoed the THC ban. I did a video on that if you want to check it out a couple of weeks ago. And I think there just needs to be regulation. Just put regulations on THC. There's no need to ban it. It's a booming industry here in Texas. So that's something that both sides of the aisle, people from both sides in the middle, agreed on and pressured the government to veto them. So it was actually pretty good to see that It was good to see. Let's keep going. Regulate hemp-derived products. Hemp-derived products. Legislation to comprehensively regulate hemp-derived products, including limiting potency, restricting synthetically modified compounds, and establishing enforcement mechanisms, all without bounding a lawful agricultural community. All right, so more THC regulations. Like I said, this is good. Protect unborn children. Legislation further protecting unborn children and their mothers from harm of abortion. This was a big issue back in, what was it, 2020? What year was that? Oh, I think it passed in 2023. Yeah, here in Texas. And maybe was it 21? Let me look that up real quick. Hold on. Abortion law, Texas. Because this was a big issue. And okay, it was 2021. Okay, I remember. Okay, now I remember because it was a big issue going to the election in 2022. And everybody thought Governor Abbott was going to get clobbered by jumping jack flat, Beto O'Rourke. Didn't happen though. So that was a ballsy move by Governor Abbott. Ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. Legislation prohibiting taxpayer-funded lobbying, including the use of tax dollars to hire lobbyists and payment of tax dollars and associations that lobby the legislature. Protect human trafficking victims. Legislation similar to Senate Bill 1278 from the 89th legislature, regular session, that protects victims of human trafficking and criminal liability for nonviolent acts closely tied to their own victimization. Police personnel records. Legislation that protects law enforcement officers from public disclosure of unsubstantiated complaints and personnel files. Protect women's spaces. Legislation protecting women's privacy in sex-segregated spaces. Attorney General election powers. Legislation proposing a constitutional amendment allowing the Attorney General to prosecute state election crimes. This is another big issue because Attorney General Ken Paxton was stripped of these powers back in 2021. And so it's good to see that Governor Abbott has made this a priority and is going to, and it has put this in the agenda in the special session. Redistricting. Legislation that provides a revised congressional redistricting plan, in light of constitutional concerns raised by the U.S. Department of Justice. Title theft and deed fraud. Legislation similar to Senate Bill 648 from the 89th a regular session, that provides strengthened protections against title theft and deed fraud. Water project incentives. Legislation similar to Senate Bill 1253 from the 89th legislature that authorizes political subdivisions to reduce impact fees for builders who include water conservation and efficiency measures. State Judicial Department. Legislation similar to this, saying this word so much is getting annoying. Legislation similar to Senate Bill 2878 from the 89th legislature regular session relating relating to the operation and administration of Judicial Department of State Government. All right, so we have some things here that Governor Abbott is looking to do. The biggest ones being allowing the Attorney General to prosecute election fraud, crime, property tax relief, and THC regulation. And of course, the flooding, making sure that we have the things in place to make sure that we are better prepared here in the state for these types of disasters. So I wanted to talk about what some people thought about the legislative session, the most recent one, that is. From the Texas Scorecard, they ask what the people think, and they post their responses. So the question is, they asked the readers to grade the session results overall by a school star grade of A, B, C, or F. And here's what some readers had to say. They did not follow directions or complete the tasks given to them. Their feeble attempts toward property tax reform never addresses the soaring property tax appraisals driving our tax increases. I give it a C- because they failed to deliver on property tax relief and spent way more money than they should have, and failed to restore the AG's powers to prosecute election crimes. Maybe C- was too generous. So here we go. This is a perfect example of why we have this. Governor Abbott was able to call this. They failed to deliver on property tax relief and to restore AG's powers to prosecute crimes in the election crime. So those two things are in there, and hopefully they can get this done, and then this grade will go higher from this person. I almost gave them an F, but ended with the C due to the foreign ownership of Texas land being banned. That was actually pretty good. We packed the House and Senate with professed conservatives, then watched them pull the same stuff every session. As we get down this list, you see that people actually gave the Senate some credit, and the House is what the problem is. And I talk about this often. We have a bunch of rhinos in the House, and that's what makes the state not as conservative as it should be. We should be like Florida, honestly. Hate to say, we should be leading the way. The budget is excessive. There was little property tax relief. Medicaid should not go to any illegal aliens. There you go. Yeah, exactly. Didn't lower my taxes, and elections are not secure. So here we go. Another one with two major issues which is going to bring back the state legislature this month to work on. Solidly an F, primarily due to a House that was yet again torpedoed by rhinos. The House did almost none of the high priority work they were sent to in Austin to accomplish. While the Senate made some progress, how could they let the budget balloon like that? Both chambers need a little Doge backbone. The Senate did okay, but the House needs to be revamped. If this session was a real product at a real company, then the entire lot of legislators will receive a written warning of failure to accomplish clearly set goals. Until dramatic property tax reform is enacted and loss of my home is no longer an issue, my legislators have failed me miserably. Texas carries a multi-billion-dollar surplus, so there's no reason to ignore a tax reform. Yes, we have, I believe it was $24 billion in surplus recently. So the people want to see that put back in give us some kind of relief. Give the people some kind of relief with that major surplus. I gave the 89th legislative session F because both the House and Senate did not fulfill the Texas GOP legislative priorities. Okay, that's fair. My overall grade of C is mainly due to the pitiful performance of the Texas House. The Senate gets an A- or B+, but it's time for the people to engage at the primary level and get rid of rhinos in the House. And I've been saying this all along. I talk about this a lot. The Senate doesn't do a bad job. The Senate passes conservative bills. But the problem is the House. That's what the big problem is. So the legislature always goes down to the line, spending more and giving back to Texans as little as possible. Not as bad as I expected with the rhinos like Will Metcalf, Cecil Bell, Dade Phelan, and Dustin Burrows in the House, conspiring with Democrats to eliminate conservative legislation. But I'm disappointed in the puny property tax relief and enormous state spending budget that was passed. Grade F. The 89th session failed Texans by prioritizing the interests of well-funded lobbyists over the needs of everyday citizens. The House flunked, but the Senate got a B+. There we go. People will give the Senate a higher grade than the House. Property tax needs to have been eliminated. The overtaxes fail to give us a refund and then spend it to subsidize an industry that makes millions of dollars to entertain us. Based on the end results alone, I gave this session a C. But if we were judging overall behavior, it would be an F. Fran Rhodes, I know her. I actually met her. I went down to Austin with her it was back in 2021, before that session started. I rode down to Austin with her, and we went to the House, we went into the state capitol and went to different offices and hand out the GOP priorities. So yeah, and we met her. It was a quick turnaround trip. We elect those who say they are conservatives, but the delays, votes, and general disdain shown towards voters Prove them false. I give them a C. They took too long to get started and guaranteed they wouldn't finish strong. So they didn't. I mean, yeah, they did take a long time to get started. It was like, okay, it's already been weeks have gone by and they've got nothing done. Yeah, they took way too long. I don't think I've ever been seeing the smoke and mirrors machine work so hard. We have a lot of D's and cloaks in Austin. D's and R cloaks in Austin. Yeah, a lot of rhinos down there. Rhinos is bad, if not worse than DC, is what I've been told. Austin is a mess. So yeah, but hey, I mean, not everything was bad that happened this last session. Not everything was bad. We had bail reform, which was huge. We had the foreign adversaries being banned from buying property in Texas. That was a big deal. So not everything was bad. And we had school choice that was passed, which is, I know, was a huge agenda for Governor Abbott, and it got done. So not everything was bad, but I think there could have been other things that should have been a priority, like strengthening the state's grid. I would have loved to see more things happen for the grid to be strengthened. I mean, it has been in recent years after what happened in 2021, but I think more needs to be done. But yeah, I'm going to leave that right there. Hope you enjoyed the video. No videos from a news outlet. You just talked to me all evening. So thanks for listening. If you watched the entire video, I wanted to read these for you. We have a special session coming up, and Governor Abbott will continue to call them back if he needs to, because he's done it in the past. So thank goodness he has the ability to do that. But all right, guys, thanks for listening. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Take care.